Alrighty. Okay, this is not ESPN 30 for 30, but it is my 98 for 98. The 98 seasons in the history of the New York Football Giants. I'm trying to get it done in 98 days. Probably not going to happen. But I'm trying to get it done before the beginning of football season, which starts September 10th against the Cowboys. So that I should be able to get done, but 98 and 98 days, it just sounded like a catchy title, so that's why I did that. But we are up to the 33rd season, and we're pushing into the late 50s now with the 33rd season in the history of the New York Football Giants. The 1957 season was the 33rd season for the Giants. 38th season in the history of the NFL. Remember, the Giants started in 1925. NFL started in 1920, so the NFL is 5 years older. Giants, of course, coming off, they were the defending world champions in 1956. 1956 be very, very good to the New York Football Giants. It was their fourth championship they won. They won in 27. 1927, they won because they had the best overall winning percentage. It was just one big division. And they were 11-1-1. They had the best winning percentage. Therefore, they won the title in 1927. Then they won the two previous championship games. One was 1934, was the Sneakers game, very famous game. They beat the Chicago Bears 30-13 at the Polo Grounds. And then in 1938, they beat the Green Bay Packers 23-17 at the Polo Grounds. Then they won last season. They won in Yankee Stadium. They moved to Yankee Stadium in 1956. So for the first 31 seasons, the Giants were at the Polo Grounds from 1925 to 55. So the first 31 seasons, they were at the Polo Grounds. But starting in 1956, the Giants moved to Yankee Stadium. So this would be the second season for the Giants at Yankee Stadium. It was also the fourth season in the head coaching career of Jim Lee Howell, who took over for Steve Owen. Jim Lee Howell came in 1954. And this was, good season. Nothing super spectacular. It was just kind of business kind of. He had in 1956, the Giants only had 3 losses. But other than that, this is the third season that Jim Lee Howell had 5 losses. He had 5 losses in 1954, 5 losses in 1955, and had 5 losses. He was 7-5 in 1957. So they had a winning season. They had a winning season every time he was with them. One of the seasons, one of the other seasons, they were 7-5. Another season, they were 6-5-1. The championship season, I believe they were 8-3-1. But this year they were 7-5. They had their chances. They just couldn't beat the Browns. They lost a couple other games. We'll go over those games. I mean, they had their chances. The Browns, only had 2 losses, I believe. We'll go over that. They were 9-2-1. Let's take a look. See here. I think they were 9-2-1. I know the Giants were 7-5. The Browns were 9-2-1. Yeah. This was also 1957, so this happened to be the rookie season of some guy named Jim Brown. And actually the first game ever that Jim Brown played in, I mean, except for they might have obviously a preseason game. Let me see here. So they had a preseason game, the Browns, Cleveland Browns here. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Wow, that's right. This is back in the day. 6 preseason games. 6. But his first regular season game, they played at home. The Browns played at home against the Giants, and this is one of the games that the Giants had a chance, could have won. The Browns won 6-3. That was the one thing, is that if you could have switched the 2 games that the Giants lost to the Browns, the Giants would have won the division. But it was just not meant to be. Let's see. So we got the 1957 NFL season. So good. It was good. It was. I mean, the Browns won by a couple of games. The Giants were in second place. The Giants were 7-5. The Browns were 9-2-1. As I said, the Giants had their chances. You know, they could have beaten the Browns the 2 times that they played. They lost 2 tough games to the Browns, 2 close games. They could have beat the Browns both times. The Giants would have been 9-3, and the Browns would have been 7-4-1, and the Giants would have won. Would have gone to the championship. In the Western Conference, it was very exciting because the Lions and the 49ers wound up tied at the end of the regular season, and they forced a playoff game between the 49ers and the Lions, and it wound up being, it's not such a famous game, but it was a very memorable game, I guess, because the 49ers had never made the playoffs before, or they never, especially this is the first time the 49ers went to the playoffs, and they had a chance to go to the championship game, and they were winning 27-7 in the, let's see if we can pop this up here. They were winning 27-7. Let's see, where are we at here? Oh, did I have it here? Oh, there you go. So the 49ers were home at Kezar Stadium. They were winning 27-7 in the third quarter. They got down. Gordy Saltow kicked a 10-yard field goal for the 49ers. And it was a 10-yard field goal. So in other words, they got down around the 3-yard line. But the Lions held tight, kept the 49ers out, and they forced them to kick a field goal. So basically, like with 5 minutes or so into the third quarter, somewhere around there, the 49ers were winning 27-7. They were up by 20 points. Now, if they had scored a touchdown and they went up 31-7, it might have been, well, the game might have wound up tied and it might have gone to overtime, whatever. But the 49ers were up by 20 points in the third quarter, and they lost. They gave up 3 touchdowns in a row. That put them down 28-27, and then the Lions kicked an additional field goal to wind up winning 31-27. So it was a very heartbreaking loss for the 49ers. So the Detroit Lions won the playoff game. They went to the championship game, and then they annihilated the Cleveland Browns in the championship game. We'll go over that in a moment here. But it was a very, very exciting season. Very exciting season, especially, in the Western Conference there. Let's see here. So we got the 1957 NFL season. Was the 38th regular season in the history of the National Football League. So as I said, the 38th for the NFL, 33rd for the New York Giants. The season ended with the Detroit Lions defeating the Cleveland Browns in the 1957 NFL championship game, 59-14. Not much of a game. The NFL draft was held on November 26, 1956, and January 31st, 1957, at Philadelphia's Warwick Hotel and the Bellevue Stratford Hotel. With the first pick, the Green Bay Packers selected halfback Paul Hornung from the University of Notre Dame. Good pick. Major rule changes. During sudden death overtime, rules for timeouts are the same as in a regular game, including the last 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarters. Home teams wore dark jerseys and road team wore white. Previously, NFL teams were allowed to wear whatever uniform color they liked, even if it clashed with the other team. You'll see sometimes, like maybe you if you ever watch a YouTube video or something, you might watch a game from the 40s or the 50s, and both teams have dark jerseys on, and like, oh, how does that work? But they didn't have like a white jersey or they weren't like white pants. A lot of teams that had dark pants and dark jerseys. So you got 2 teams playing against each other. It's like everything's dark. It's like, wow, but that all changed. So it said, so previously the NFL teams were allowed to wear whatever uniform color they liked, even if it clashed with the other team, and were not required to have a white jersey. So you'll know a lot of times there were certain just games you'll see, as I said, if you ever maybe watch like highlights or YouTube videos or whatever, as I said, maybe something in the 50s or the 40s, and you look, and neither team has a white jersey on. And it's like, how does that happen? But it's what it was. So 1957, the home team wore dark jerseys, like pretty much like they do nowadays. And the road team wore white. Very interesting. So that started in 1957. Then we have here the conference races. Cleveland won its opener 6-3 over the Giants, which we'll go over in a couple minutes here, and led the Eastern Conference from wire to wire. Although at one point they led wire to wire, but at one point they were in week 4. They got tied back with the Giants once again. Once again, we'll go over that in a bit. A 17-7 loss to the Eagles in week 4 forced the Browns to share the lead with the New York Giants. But the Giants lost the following week and spent the rest of the season trying to catch Cleveland, and they just weren't able to do it. The Giants, in fact, lost their final 3 games. I mean, they were right there. They were like a game behind, almost, going up to after week 9. They were like 1 game back. The Giants had 2 losses, and the Browns had 1. So the Giants were like right there with 3 games to go, right there. The Browns would lose 1 additional game, giving them 2 losses, and the Giants would go from 2 losses to 5 losses. So the Giants would lose their final 3 games and just kill their season. The Western Conference race was more protracted. Baltimore, Detroit, and San Francisco were tied for the lead several times. Now, you're going to start noticing here that Baltimore has been pretty much a no-show. I mean, as far as any type of championship races or leads or anything like that, or division titles or conference titles, I guess they call them back then. But you're going to start noticing things are changing, right? There's some guy by the name of Johnny Unitas is starting to quarterback the Colts. Weeb Eubank is the head coach of the Colts. And the Colts are going to start becoming very formidable opponents here, especially to the Giants, because this is 1957. The Colts would be in the next 2 NFL championship games against the Giants, and the Colts would wind up winning both. 1958, they won 23-17 in overtime, and then they would win 31-16 in Baltimore in 1959. So you're going to start noticing that the Colts were starting to become a very, very good team. Let's see here. So they were all tied with the lead several times, and they all had identical 7-4 records at the end of the final, the second to last week. So they were all 7-4. They all had 1 game left to go. 12-game schedule. All 3 were 7-4 after 11 weeks. When 2 teams tied for first place, they would meet in a 1-game playoff. The NFL did not have a provision for this situation if all 3 teams would win, tie or lose. Then a 2-week playoff series began next Sunday with Baltimore drawing a bye. San Francisco would play Detroit, and the winner would meeting the Colts in Baltimore on December 29th. Detroit and San Fran both won while starting their backup quarterbacks, Tobin Rote and rookie John Brody, respectively. But the Colts lost, meaning that their additional playoff was not required. So they almost had, in the Western Conference, they almost had a 3-way tie but they lost 37-21 to the Rams in their final game. Matter of fact, the Colts lost their final 2 games of the season. The Colts were 7-3. They lost their final 2. They lost to the 49ers 17-13. Then they lost 37-21. So they almost had a 3-way tie. Almost had a 3-way tie. But it was not meant to be. So the 49ers and the Detroit Lions both wound up 8-4 at the end of the regular season, and it was a playoff game. And the Detroit Lions wound up winning 31-27. With the 49ers in the third quarter up 27-7 in this playoff game, and they gave up 24 points and lost 31-27. Let's see, the NFL, interesting, most valuable player, the AP NFL most valuable player, was Jim Brown, fullback from Cleveland. His rookie season, he was the NFL most valuable player. The AP NFL Coach of the Year was George Wilson of the Lions. Let's see here. It said coaching changes. The Lions' Buddy Parker was replaced by George Wilson. Pittsburgh Steelers' Walt Kiesling was replaced by Buddy Parker. So Buddy Parker went from the Lions to the Steelers. Let's see. Then we got stadium changes. The Green Bay Packers moved from City Stadium to their new City Stadium. Interesting. So the draft. The Giants did draft a Hall of Fame. Now, this draft here had 9 Hall of Famers in it. This is the most I've ever seen so far. 9 Hall of Famers were selected. I'm going to say I believe it was round 9, the Giants did select a Hall of Famer, but it just didn't. I'll go over it in a moment here. We'll talk about who it was. The 1957 NFL Draft had its first 4 rounds held on November 26, 1956 at the Warwick Hotel in Philadelphia, and its final 26 rounds. There was 30 rounds altogether. 30. Where the final 26 rounds were held on January 31st, 1957 at the Bellevue Stratford Hotel, also in Philadelphia. This was the 11th year that the first overall pick was a bonus pick determined by lottery, with the previous 10 winners being ineligible for the draw. Only the Chicago Cardinals and the Green Bay Packers had an equal chance of winning. The draft lottery was won by Green Bay, who selected Paul Hornung, who was a Hall of Famer. Let's see here. Matter of fact, in the first round alone, 4 Hall of Famers were selected. Jim Parker, a guard for the Colts, who he was a very, very good guard. Jim Brown got selected. Len Dawson of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who became famous or whatever, more so with the Kansas City Chiefs, and Paul Hornung. So 4 out of the 13 picks in the first round wound up being Hall of Famers. But the Giants did not have a pick in the first round, but they traded that to the Rams because the year before the Giants traded with the Rams to get Andy Robustelli, who wound up being a Hall of Fame defensive end for the New York Giants. He was huge. It was a great trade for the Giants when they traded with the Rams. But interestingly enough, this is kind of funny. With the pick that the Rams got from the Giants, there was wound up being pick number 11 overall. The Rams selected, they say here, a back. Wound up being an end, a wide receiver, a Del Schaffner from Baylor. So the Giants, if I can see here, Del Schaffner wound up going to the Giants. He was with the Rams from 57 to 60. Del Schaffner going to the Giants from 61 to 67. So he wound up playing for the Giants. He was a 5-time first-team All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. He led the league in receiving yards in 1958, NFL 1960s All-Decade Team. I mean, I'm really kind of scratching my head how this guy's not in the Hall of Fame. He was an outstanding receiver. I mean, he went to 3 championship games. But so actually the Rams wound up selecting Del Schaffner, and he wound up going to the Giants after all in 1961. All right, anyway. So the Giants in the second round took Sam DeLuca, a tackle from South Carolina. Third round, they took Dennis. This draft was not good at all for the Giants. It was good. Actually, they wound up with 2 Hall of Famers out of it because they traded with the Rams to get Andy Robustelli, who wound up being a Hall of Famer. And the Giants did directly draft another Hall of Famer, but we'll go over this when I get to him. When I get to the 9th round, we'll get into that. Round 3. Giants took Dennis Mendyke, a back from Michigan State. Round 4, the Giants didn't have a pick. Round 5, the Giants took Larry Wesley, a tackle from Florida. Round 6, the Giants took Bob Hobart, a tackle from Minnesota. Round 7, Chuck Curtis, a quarterback from TCU. Round 8, they took Johnny Bookman, a back from Florida. Round 10, they took Gordon Massa, a center from Holy Cross. And I looked at all the other rounds. There was like really pretty much nothing. Not a good draft for the Giants. However, round 9, pick 109, they took a wide receiver from Texas, El Paso. Guy's name is Don Maynard, Hall of Famer. He didn't play for the Giants in 1957. This is when the draft was. I think he was on like their practice squad, a taxi squad or whatever. So he didn't play. He played 1958 for the Giants. And he pretty much like returned kickoffs. He might have had a couple catches, nothing super spectacular. But after the 1958 season, I think they brought him back in 58, and the Giants wound up releasing him like after training camp or during training camp. He said he didn't get along real well with Ali Sherman, who was the Giants' offensive coordinator at the time. He seemed to think that Ali kind of had it in for him. So he wasn't overly thrilled with playing, I think, for the Giants and for Ali Sherman. So the Giants, I think, let him go. He's either after training camp or during training camp, but he wound up playing in the Canadian Football League in 1959. While in 1960, he wound up coming back. He played in the AFL for the New York Titans, who changed their name in 1963 to the New York Jets. And then, of course, after the 1968 season, Don Maynard, the New York Jets, Joe Namath, and so on and so on and so on, wound up winning the Super Bowl. But Don Maynard wound up playing, I think, until 1973. I think it was. I think he played, I think, 1972. Well, let me check this out here. I think he was up with the Jets till 1972, and then he played with the Cardinals in 1973. Yeah, I mean, but he didn't want to. He didn't have much going for him. Oh, I say after his playing career was an apparent end, the 39-year-old Maynard caught on with the Houston Texans Shreveport Steamers of the World Football League the next summer, but he had just 5 receptions for the club, which was forced to abruptly move from Houston in September. So I know he played. He did play for the Cardinals. And what year was that? 1973. He played with the Cardinals. 1973, and basically that was his last season in the NFL was 1973. But okay, here we go. After the Giants in 1958, Don Maynard played for the Hamilton Tiger Cats of the CFL in 1959. Then he went to the AFL, where he latched on to the New York Titans / Jets. He was with the Titans from 1960 to 62. 63, when Sonny Werblin came in, he bought the Jets, changed their name to changed the Titans' names to the Jets in 1963. So I mean, he played 13 seasons for the New York Titans / Jets, and he wound up being a Hall of Famer. Fantastic. You know, I mean, obviously it didn't hurt either that he had Joe Namath throwing him the ball, but just goes to show you, I mean, you know, kind of, you know, the Giants, I don't know, didn't really seem to know what they had. I mean, they certainly could have used his talents, but they only had him for one season, and they just let him go. So Giants loss, but it is what it is. But so the Giants actually did wind up out of this draft, did wind up with 2 Hall of Famers, Andy Robustelli, who they got in a trade with the Rams, and they did select Don Maynard. But other than that, the Giants, this draft was pretty much like worthless for the New York Giants. Really. I mean, all right, so let's go over the Giants season. And they had their chances. They lost a couple of tough games. They actually had the lead, I believe, both times against the Browns, and they just couldn't hold on to it. The first game, as I previously mentioned, the Giants lost 6-3. Now, once again, as always, every season since 1925, the Giants always started their season on the road. Why? Well, because from 1925 to 1955, they played in the Polo Grounds, where they shared the stadium with the New York Baseball Giants. Now, pretty much they wanted to make sure that the baseball season was over with, and that the regular baseball season was over with, and I guess pretty much if any chance of the baseball Giants making the World Series. They want to make sure that the World Series was over. So the Giants didn't play their first home game till October 20th, when the baseball season was totally over. But once again, now they're sharing their stadium with the Yankee Stadium with the New York Yankees. So once again, their first 3 games were on the road. And as I said, week 4, the 4th game of the season was when they finally came home. But anyway, first game of the season, they played in Cleveland. Now, the Cleveland, they outgained Cleveland. Not by much. I mean, it is a very, obviously, they lost 6-3. It was a low-scoring game. The Giants had 194 yards of offense. Cleveland had 162 yards of offense. Cleveland had 46 yards passing. The Giants only had 39. There were 7 completions in the whole game. But the Giants had 155 yards rushing. Cleveland had 122. Giants had 12 first downs. Cleveland had 10. But the Giants had a lead. Penei Sewell kicked a 32-yard field goal in the second quarter, so the Giants were winning. Lou Groza kicked a 29-yard field goal for the Browns. So at halftime, it was 3-3. The only scoring that there was Lou Groza kicked a rather long field goal. So basically, Cleveland got down to the Giants' 40. And Lou Groza kicked a 47-yard field goal in the fourth quarter. And that was the difference in the game, 6-3. So basically, in the second quarter, after Penei Sewell kicked a 32-yard field goal, the Giants, the whole rest of the game, didn't score. Had they scored, right? But I mean, they had a chance. They were winning. I mean, they only gave up 6 points, but they couldn't score. The Giants completed 3 passes all game. 3 passes. I mean, they did a nice job running the ball, but they couldn't complete a pass. So once again, it was that's a lost chance right there for the Giants. So they started the season off 0-1. Then they went up. Let's see. Then the next 2 weeks, they on October 5th, Saturday, October 5th in Philly, they beat the Eagles 24-20. The following week, Sunday, October 13th in Washington, they beat the Redskins 24-20. Then they came home. First game at home. It was Sunday, October 20th against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They would win 35-0. So now the Giants are 3-1. Then, unfortunately, at home, the Washington Redskins came, and the Giants lost. So on Sunday, October 27th, at Yankee Stadium against the Washington Redskins, the Redskins won 31-14. Giants had 5 turnovers. Redskins only had 1. Let's see. Sometimes there's like a fumble recovery for a touchdown or an interception return. The Redskins had a punt return for a touchdown, 76-yard punt return for a touchdown. And I'm sure the 5 turnovers the Giants had didn't help either. So the Giants lost at home 31-14. So once again, to an inferior opponent, the Giants at home lost. So now they're 3-2. So basically now they have 2 losses. The Browns only have 1 loss for a while. So the Giants wind up winning the next 4 games. So they're kind of keeping pace with the Browns. So after was it week 9, the Giants are only 1 game back. They still got a chance, right? So in week 6, the Giants go play in Green Bay. They beat the Packers 31-17. So now the Giants are 4-2. The following week, they're at home Sunday, November 10th to play Chicago Cardinals. They would win that game 27-14. So now the Giants are 5-2. Right there. They're right there with the Browns. The following week, Sunday, November 17th, at home against the Eagles, the Giants would shut them out. They would win 13-0. Now the Giants are 6-2. They're still right there. Then they got to play, let's say, they went to play the Chicago Cardinals in Chicago. And Sunday, November 24th, the Giants would win 28-21. So the Giants are now 7-2. Giants are 7-2. Let's see. And I think that let's see here. So after week 9, Oh, okay, shows it right there. That's it. Right. So week 9, the Giants were 7-2. The Browns were 7-1-1. So the Giants were like about a half a game back, basically. 7-2, 7-1-1. They were right there. They had a chance. But then, let's see. In the 10th week, at home, they would lose to the San Francisco 49ers, 27-17. So now the Giants are 7-3. They still have a chance because the Browns won. So the Browns only had one loss. The Giants had 3 losses. But still, with 2 games left, the Giants, one of the games, the final game of the season was against the Browns. If the Giants could beat the Browns the final game of the season, the Giants could beat the Steelers in week 11. And if the Browns were to lose, let's see, what did the Browns do? No, the Browns lost. The Browns lost in week 11. So now the Browns are 8-2-1. And the Giants only had 3 losses going into their week 11 game. But they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road, 21-10. Gave them 4 losses. Browns only had 2 with 1 game left. So the Giants season was pretty much over with. But the Giants were like a half a game back of first place with 3 games to go. They lost their final 3 games of the season. And any hope of going back to the championship game. It's just not meant to be. So the final game of the season, the Giants lost at home against the Cleveland Browns, 34-28. The Giants were winning 28-27. This game was a good game. Wound up going kind of back and forth. I mean, the Giants were up. Let's see, the Giants were up 21-17. Then the Browns went up 24-21. Then the Browns went up 27-21. Then the Giants scored to make it 28-27. And then Luke Carpenter ran a 2-yard rush in, and Lou Groza's extra point made it 34-28. So the game went back and forth. The Browns were up 7-0. The Giants tied at 7. The Giants went up 14-7. The Browns came back and tied it. Then the Giants were up 21-17. Then it was the Giants went up 21-14. Then the Browns made it 21-17. Then the Browns went ahead 24-21. Then the Browns were up 27-21. Then the Giants were up 28-27. And then the final score, the final touchdown in the game, the dagger, shall you say? The Browns scored a touchdown in the 4th quarter to win 34-28. So the Giants lost 2 tough games to the Cleveland Browns. They had their chances. The first game of the season, last game of the season, 2 games that they lost to the Cleveland Browns. The Giants actually had the lead in both games. If they were able to hold on to the lead, on both of those games, the Giants would have wound up winning. The Giants would have been 9-3, and the Browns would have been 7-4-1. So the Giants would have won the division. They had the lead in both those games, couldn't hold on to the lead. So they had their chances, but it just was not meant to be. So then we go to the 1957 championship game, which is not much of a championship game. Let me tell you what. The game was played in Detroit. Now they're in the Western Conference. So the championship game started in 1933. So the way it worked out was the Chicago Bears hosted the first. They were in the Western Conference. They were division. I think it might have been back then in 1933. So they hosted the first initial game. So the team from the Western Conference or Western Division hosted the odd-numbered year championship games. The Eastern Conference or the Eastern Division hosted the even-number years. So that's why it's 1957. The Western Division or Western Conference hosted the championship game. So this game was played in Detroit. Now, Detroit won, they won their regular meeting between the two. Detroit had 20-7. But somehow it says the Browns were still favored. I think because the Lions had their backup quarterback in there, Tobin Rote. Bobby Lane wound up getting hurt. We'll go over this here. So the Lions had their backup quarterback in there. And that's why I think the Browns were favored. I think it was 3 points. So I'll go over it. It's in here somewhere. But tell you what, this was not much of a game. It was 31-7 at half. And I mean, the Lions scored at least 14 points in every quarter. They scored 2 touchdowns in every quarter. So real fast, the 1957 NFL championship game was the 25th annual championship game, which started in 1933. It was held on December 29th at Briggs Stadium in Detroit, Michigan. The Lions were 8-4 winners of the Western Conference, hosted the Cleveland Browns, who were 9-2-1 champions of the Eastern Conference. Detroit had won the regular season game 20-7 3 weeks earlier on December 8th, which was also in Briggs Stadium. But they lost Bobby Lane with a broken ankle late in the first half in that game. So that's why Bobby Lane didn't play in this championship game. So reserve quarterback Tobin Rote, a starter the previous year with Green Bay, filled in for Lane and won that game with Cleveland. Then the next week at Chicago, and the tiebreaker playoff game at San Francisco. So basically, when the San Francisco 49ers were up 27-7 in their playoff game against the Detroit Lions, the Lions came back with a backup quarterback. They scored 24 points in basically like a quarter and a half, the final quarter and a half. Amazing. It was the 4th pairing of the 2 teams in the championship game. The Browns and the Lions. This is the 4th time that they wound up playing each other in the champ. They wound up playing each other in 1952, 1952. The Lions won. I think it was 17-6 or 17-7. I'm sorry, 7. The Detroit Lions won in 1952, 17-7. The Lions won 1953, 17-16. 1954, the Browns got their revenge. They won 56-10 in 1954. So this was the 4th time in the 50s that the Browns and the Lions faced each other in a championship game. So, but after all 4 games were over, the Lions won 3 of them, and the Browns only won 1. It was the 4th pairing between the 2 teams in the championship game. They previously met in 1952, 53, and 54. The Browns, idle the previous week, were favored by 3 points because they had a week off because the Lions and the 49ers were playing a playoff game to see who would go to the championship game. Plus, the Lions, even the Lions were at home. The Lions had their backup quarterback in there, and the Browns had a better record. The Browns were 9-2-1. Lions were 8-4. And I said the Browns had a week off, too, to rest up. Let's see. But the home underdog Lions scored 2 touchdowns in each quarter and won in a rout, 59-14. Until 2006, this was the last time that major professional teams from Michigan and Ohio met in a postseason game or series in any sport. As of 2022, this is the last NFL playoff game played in the city of Detroit, other than a Super Bowl. The Lions' other 2 home playoff games since 1990. The Lions' other 2 home playoff games since, which were in 1991 and 1993, were at the Silverdome in suburban Pontiac. This also remains as the Lions' 4th and most recent league title and most recent championship appearance, including the Super Bowl. As of the 2022 season, starting a 66-year championship drought for the Lions. Yeah, so the 1957 was the last time that the Lions won a championship. You want to go, you can go back 10 years there, and 1947 was the last time that the Cardinals won a championship. Cardinals went to the championship game in 47 and 48. They won 28-21 over the Eagles in 1947. The following year, in a blizzard in Philadelphia, the Eagles would exact their revenge on the Cardinals. They would beat them 7-0. But so it's been since 1957 was the last time the Lions won a championship game, and it was 1947 the last time the Cardinals won a championship game. So it's been a long, long time. There was a lot of Hall of Fame. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There was 10 Hall of Famers who played in this game. But I said it wasn't much of a game. I mean, let's see. Wrote through 4, the backup quarterback threw 4 touchdown passes in the game, completing 12 of 19 passes for 280 yards, and he also ran for a touchdown. Browns quarterback Tommy O'Connell and Milt Plum, on the other hand, hit on a combined total of 9 of 22 passes for 112 yards, taking full advantage of a pass interception and a fumble. Detroit ran it up 17-0 lead in the first quarter. Rookie running back Jim Brown gave the Cleveland Rooters some hope with a 29-yard touchdown run at the start of the second period to make it 17-7. Things went bad from worse for the Browns. Hampered by injuries to quarterbacks O'Connell and Plum, the Lions romped for 14 points in each of the last three quarters and won by 45 points, 59-14. In their final 6 quarters of play, including their previous divisional playoff games, the Lions outscored their opponents 83-17. Wow. So the Lions wind up. This is the Lions' last title. The Lions have not appeared in an NFL championship game, including the Super Bowl, since the title 66 years ago. It was their last postseason appearance until 1970, which they lost 5-0 in the Cotton Bowl to the Cowboys. So the Lions went from 1957 to 1970 without going to the playoffs. So 1970, the Lions finally, with a record of 10-4, the Lions finally went to the playoffs in 1970, and they lost 5-0. One of my all-time favorite scores of all time. They lost to the Cowboys 5-0 at the Cotton Bowl. And there's their last postseason home game and victory until 1991. So let's see. It says 1991 was also the only time the Lions have advanced as far as the conference championship game, losing to the NFC Championship game 41-10 to the Redskins, who went on to win the Super Bowl. Yeah, they got routed, and absolutely that game, 1991. That was an absolute horrible game. But anyway, this was a great season for the Detroit Lions, but it was also to be the last great season for the Detroit Lions in 1957. But anyway, the Giants were 7-5. You know, they had their chances. 2 games against the Browns. They had the lead in both games. Couldn't hold the lead. They also had a chance with 3 games to go. They were a half a game behind the Browns. They lost their final 3 games. However, things would turn around. 1958, 1959, the Giants would wind up winning their division or conference, I guess as it's called, and the Giants would go back to the championship games in 1958 and 59. So better times were ahead for the New York Giants. But 1957, they had their chances. They just fell a little bit short. So that pretty much wraps up the 1957 season for the New York Giants. I'll be back again tomorrow with the 1958 season, the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 34th season in the history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.